In the American legal system, there is a rare judicial mechanism called freestanding actual innocence. It bypasses the normal appeals process and operates as a system-wide emergency override, used only when a federal judge determines a catastrophic failure has occurred and a person is definitively innocent. Scott Jones spent a decade in prison under these exact circumstances. He was convicted of a crime without a single piece of physical evidence. His sentence built almost entirely on the testimony of one man, his father, Ken Jones. In August 2013, the timeline of this case culminated inside a federal courtroom. Judge Robert E. Jones presided over a highly unusual, multi-day evidentiary hearing to examine how the original conviction happened. The official transcript of that hearing offers a view into the specific sequence of events that led to Scott's conviction. It documents how legal processes, from property law to restraining orders, were applied to a teenager who had attempted to report a crime within his own home. Early in the transcript, Ken Jones takes the stand. When directly asked if he ever physically or sexually abused his son Scott, Ken issues an absolute categorical denial. To understand why a federal court is questioning a father about child abuse, we have to pause the transcript and jump back to the year 2002. Scott was 16 years old. He had recently run away from home, and his priority was protecting his younger siblings. He went straight to the Toledo, Oregon Police Department and filed a detailed report about his father. Scott reported that Ken systematically beat the family. He detailed how his father would strip the children and kiss their nude bodies, behavior Ken claimed was simply an expression of love. When confronted with exposure, abusers frequently deploy a psychological framework called DARVO. This stands for deny, attack, and reverse victim and offender. They invert reality to confuse investigators and put their accusers on trial. Ken immediately executed the attack and reverse phases. He called the police and reported a burglary, claiming his runaway son broke into the family home to steal his own belongings. This created a legal trap. The burglary charge led to an arrest, and Scott's release conditions came attached with a restraining order. That piece of paper gave Ken state-backed legal leverage over his son. Ken used this leverage to coerce Scott into a meeting. Once there, Ken claimed Scott confessed to a crime, effectively silencing the whistleblower by making him the defendant. Returning to the 2013 transcript, we see Ken attempting to reframe this behavior while under oath. He testifies he never undressed the children, but admits to kissing their necks and stomachs, claiming his beard was merely tickling them. He frames this as a loving parent, telling the court, "I loved them, and I was a very good Christian father." Scott quickly points out the reality of the situation. The behavior Ken just admitted to on the witness stand constitutes an arrestable offense under state law. But rather than investigate the admission, the Deputy Attorney General steps in. The state provides Ken with an off-ramp, accepting the tickling excuse without further inquiry. By accepting the tickling explanation, the prosecutor avoided a scenario where the credibility of the state's key witness was destroyed, an outcome that would have undermined the legal basis for Scott's original conviction. Eventually, the narrative constructed at trial shattered. Under the pressure of the federal hearing, Ken admitted to the court that the case was fabricated, and his original testimony was false. Corroborated by a videotaped interview, Scott's sister Stephanie joins her father and sister's recantations, explaining she was isolated and coached to use terms she didn't understand. Evaluating this testimony, Judge Jones issued a formal opinion and order, officially declaring Scott actually innocent. Even with a federal judge's declaration of truth, the state attorney general's office fought the mandate, keeping Scott imprisoned for 30 days before releasing him. The state required zero physical evidence to convict a teenager, locking him away for 10 years. Yet when presented with recantations from every major witness, they actively fought to maintain the imprisonment. Scott survived the ordeal. While incarcerated, he taught ESL and facilitated mental health groups. Today, he maintains a 4.0 GPA in law school, having persisted despite a system that was applied against him. DARVO is a tactic used in domestic abuse, but it can also be used to influence the legal process. The case illustrates what happens when institutional procedures are used to sustain a conviction, even as the factual basis for it collapses.